Now, reboots are a really tricky thing to get right. On one hand, if they're done right, they bring fresh ideas into a tired franchise, or allow some of the less than savoury entries in a series to be entirely scrubbed clean. On the other hand, if they're done wrong, they can destroy characters, ruin fan-favourite storylines, and worst of all, just straight up murder their own franchise altogether. But hold up, let's talk about the ones that didn't deserve that. Sometimes a reboot simply gets a bad rap, comes at the wrong time, or is only picked up by a small amount of loyal fans. For reasons undeserved, the games on this list were given a bad rap in the collective subconscious of gamers everywhere. While most of them may not have been particularly groundbreaking or even all that original, they still had that one most important factor in the world of video games. They were actually fun and honestly worth checking out. With that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 10 great video game reboots that failed anyway. Number 10, SimCity. Yes, SimCity was an absolute disaster at launch due to the always online requirement, meaning players couldn't play a single player game without a connection to the internet. As if struck by destiny itself, this meant that as soon as the game went live, the servers shut down due to a massive influx of logins. Understandably, people were, quite upset, and even to mention SimCity these days is to be met by an absolute barrage of criticism about how much better Cities Skylines is. But looking back on the game now, with none of its launch issues, it's a perfectly good city building simulator with a depth of customization not often found in the minutiae of these games. Plus, if you give the multiplayer a chance, you'll find that a very competent co-op city building experience is hidden in there, with players able to set up and trade and even visit each other's cities whenever they want. It's a true shame just how badly a launch can damage a game forever, especially when it's done to such a legendary franchise like The Sims. Number 9, Thief. Quick show of hands, who remembers Thief? Hell, who's even heard of the Thief franchise? Back in the day, Thief used to be one of the premium stealth games on the market. In the era of the emerging first-person shooter genre, Thief stood out among the crowd for its innovative stealth gameplay and focus on avoiding combat, instead of just charging in there like a rhinoceros on steroids. Then, when the perfectly serviceable Thief 2014 came out, it was received with mixed reviews and very poor sales. Now, sure, Garrett spends most of the game as a cardboard cutout of a man pretending to be Batman, but there's still a lot of heart behind the game's environments and gameplay. The fact that the player can't walk around and wantonly murder the entire population of a city means that stealth is mandatory, and as such provides a fresh challenge not often found in today's games. Yet still, the game failed despite all of this, and now poor Garrett is left to wallow in the limbo of long-lost legendary video game protagonists, right there beside Earthworm Jim. Number 8, BIONIC Commando. Now, the step from 2D to 3D sometimes does a game well. I mean, look at Super Mario 64, for example. But for others, it became the video game equivalent of the death penalty. BIONIC Commando debuted on the Xbox 360 to scathing reviews and little player fanfare. It was also another one of the countless casualties of the mid-noughties obsession to make sure everything was as serious and edgy as possible, with everyone talking really gruff for absolutely no reason. However, the game did have some promise too. The action was good, and while the swinging mechanics didn't exactly rival Spider-Man, they were still pretty fun and fluid to use. Nowadays, all people remember from BIONIC Commando is the rather laughable plot. Let's all just pretend that bionic arm is just a bionic arm. Yep, no dead wives here. Nope, no siree. 7, Prince of Persia. Prince of Persia from 2008 is one of those games that looks great, plays decently enough, and gives the player so much freedom of choice it could have easily been one of the best games of the year. However, things didn't go that way. Most of the problems players had stemmed from just how easy it was. The original trilogy was lauded for its difficulty and high-stakes action, but now, not only could the prince not fail, he couldn't even die. However, if the player steps back for a second and instead chooses to experience the game as a journey, taking their time with the puzzles or the exploration, then the strengths really become obvious. 6, Alien vs Predator. When it comes to cursed franchises, Alien vs Predator may stand at the very top of the corpse pile. For some reason, the two most brutal and badass aliens in cinema just cannot seem to get along when it comes to their crossovers. Just like the original 1999 game of the same name, Alien vs Predator allowed players to step into the shoes of the bad guys, something we don't get to do all that often. Playing as any of the 3 available races in the game's excellent multiplayer was a treat. The Alien was a stealthy assassin relying on speed and surprise to kill its enemies. The Marine was just classic FPS gameplay, if it ain't broke don't fix it, right? And the Predator was a happy medium between the two. But sadly, xenomorphs and predators are apparently no longer cool, and the game died a brutal, swift death. Number 5. DMC Devil May Cry. Pop quiz. What's the quickest way to completely alienate your intended audience and basically ruin any chance a game has of a reboot? That's right, change the protagonist's hair. Yes, when Dante's redesign was first unveiled for DMC, fans were furious, and the game suffered so much that it still hasn't recovered to this day. After all, when any iconic character is redesigned, there is going to be backlash. However, if you look past the cringy emo look and some awful attempts at shock humor, DMC is a Devil May Cry game through and through. The combos are visceral, the action never stops, and the weapons meet the great expectations that fans have come to love. Not only that, but it had a pretty decent story hidden away there too. If the protagonist was called anything apart from Dante, maybe it would have stood a chance, and we'd probably be neck deep in DMC sequels already. 4. Mirror's Edge Catalyst. The 2000s were a lawless time, a time where, for some unknowable reason, absolutely everybody was obsessed with parkour. Of course, games latched onto this, and almost every one released simply had to feature it in some way or another. The original Mirror's Edge stands at the peak of the parkour game. So, years down the line, when the follow-up finally happened, nobody cared even a tiny bit. Parkour, cool as it was, is just so last decade. The kids don't parkour anymore, they look at prequel memes, okay? Make a prequel memes game. Oh no, not like this! Not like this! Still, it is a shame because while Catalyst didn't exactly reinvent the wheel when it came to clambering up buildings, it was still a satisfying experience. The ability to run across a beautifully oppressive future rooftop skyline was as invigorating as ever, and the game encouraged players to do so at their leisure. 3. Wolfenstein. When it comes to killing Nazis, there's no franchise more adept than Wolfenstein. Even though the franchise has enjoyed major success in the last few years, before that there was a big stinky pile of failure. The problem with 2009's Wolfenstein was it was just so generic, and everything about the game seemed basic. This was a far cry away from the techno-magic Nazis players would come to see in just a few short years later. Still, underneath all of the beige was an intense and damned fun first-person shooter. Couple that with some interesting magic abilities and a nice amount of gun customization, and it's a wonder Wolfenstein 2009 didn't pick up quite as well as it could have. 2. Call of Juarez Gunslinger. Cowboys have always been cool, that's just one of the simple facts of life. So why is it that Call of Juarez is such a dead franchise? Unfortunately, the answer isn't even down to this game, it's entirely because of Call of Juarez the Cartel. When the Cartel came out, it completely threw out the tried and true setting of the previous games and replaced it all with modern day Mexico, complete with the mandatory racist stereotypes, just for fun. So when Call of Juarez Gunslinger came out, an actual good game, nobody bought it because of the series' now eternally blighted history. The game itself is fantastic, loaded with classic Western situations and gunplay that simply demands that the player keeps going. Better yet, the story is entirely unique as it's told by an unreliable narrator, meaning the scenery and often entire waves of enemies change depending on the whims of the protagonist and whatever lie he gets caught up in this time. 1. Star Wars Battlefront 2. Okay, yes, Battlefront 2 was bad when it was released. Microtransactions and awful business practices dominated the entire game from day one, and then in a surprising twist of justice and good morals that rivaled the Sonic movie redesign, everything changed. Nowadays, Battlefront 2 is near to the best possible multiplayer Star Wars experience anyone could ask for. The microtransactions are gone, completely scrapped due to a court-mandated slap on the wrist by EA's corporate overlord, Disney. Free content is abundant and is added with alarming frequency, including loads of fan favorites like Ewoks. Ewoks! Yay! Now I know it's hard to give something a second chance, especially after what EA did with Battlefront 2, but with the way the game is going, maybe it's finally time to like Star Wars games again. And there you have it folks, 10 great video game reboots that failed anyway. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at @uslidedog. I'm Will for WhatCulture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.